Okay, so this is week 8, Tuesday, Introduction to Algebra, semester 2 from Math 6. We're going to start off with this page right over here. So it says, write the algebraic expression for each collection of algebra tiles below. So we should probably go over a few things, such as the symbolism for each of these. So you have an x square, and when you have an x square, the visual diagram you should use with this one is a big square with an x square, okay? So then an x is going to be represented by a rectangle, skinny rectangle, and that represents the x. And then, of course, any numbers, so anything that's numerical numbers, like 4, for example, it'll be represented by a small x. So with 4, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, okay? So for 1a, here you have x squared. There's 1, there's 2, so you will have 2x squared represented from that diagram. Next, you want to look for the x's. So you're looking for rectangles that are horizontal and rectangles that are vertical. So I see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then that will be plus 5x. Do you see that, Grayson? Okay. And then lastly, you look for small squares. So actually, I'm going to take that back. This is not x. This will be just, I guess, ones, essentially. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then plus 5. And it should always be in descending order, or yeah, from biggest exponent to the x, which has an exponent of 1, to no exponents. Do you see that? Okay. So for b, now with this one, let's take a look at the x squares, the large squares. You have 1 right there. So 1 and 1 is 2, right? This is a negative 1. So technically, usually in math, if it's a positive 1x squared, it will be a large yellow x squared to show that's positive. And if it's a negative x squared, it will be a big square, but normally it's red to show that it's a negative x squared, okay? So then 2 minus 2x squared minus 1x squared is going to give you what? 1x squared. Do you see that? Okay, so then we're going to take a look at the number of rectangles, okay? So I see that there is 1, 1, 1, and I'm assuming that's a negative. Is that a negative right there? Okay, so then that's 1x, 1x, 1x. This is a negative 1x, negative 1x. So if I were to write this down, that's 1, 2, 3. So that is 3x. Do you see that? 1, 2 minus 2x, because there are two negative 2x's, right? So then 3x minus 2x, that will give you a positive 1x. Do you see that? Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at all the tiny little squares, okay, which represents numbers. These numbers here, these are numerical, okay? Is that a 1 and a 1? So that's 1 and 1. So that's going to be a positive 2, right? The negative here is a negative 1, negative 1, negative 1 minus 3. Do you see that? So 2 minus 3 is a negative 1. So your answer here essentially is just going to be x squared. You don't need to put the 1 in front of the x squared because 1 times x squared is just x squared, right? Plus x minus 1. And that's your answer. But when you're doing this, Grayson, you might want to show the grouping of this so that you have the x squared together plus the x's together plus the numbers together. Do you see that? Yeah. Okay, so just make sure you show it that way. Okay, so then question number 2, over here. And it says, draw algebra tiles to represent each expression. Okay, now remember, just as a quick review, you know that x squared is a big square, right? An x could be either a vertical small x, rectangle, or a horizontal rectangle, right? And anything that's number with numericals is going to be a positive one or a negative one, a small square, right? Okay, so 7x plus 4. So that means you want to erase this because the big square is x squared, okay? So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you're going to put x, 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 okay? And they're positive x's, right? Plus 4. So if it's plus 4, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 small squares. Do you see that? So then you know that this part right here represents the 7x. This part right there represents the 4. Okay? And all together, it represents 7x plus 4. Okay? Okay, so then for B, you do have a x squared. So that's going to be a large square. So that's x squared. Okay? And then you're going to have 5x. So then we're going to use, we'll switch it up a little bit. Plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then, of course, minus 3. So this one, because it's a negative, what do you put inside the little square? Negative sign. -1. Okay? So that will represent x squared plus 5x minus 3. Now, you know that this part represents the x squared. This part represents the 5x. This part represents the minus 3. Okay? So for C, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to have you go ahead and try that on your own. So for this one, we're going to have 4 really big squares. So positive x squared, positive x squared, positive x squared, positive x squared. That's 4x squared. And then we're going to have negative 3x. So we're going to have 3 rectangles. And they're negative, so negative x, negative x, negative x. Plus 5. Your small squares is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And if you look at this right here, once again, it's always nice to check. This represents a positive 4x squared. This part represents a negative 3x. And this part represents a positive 5. Okay, so then for 3, you can go ahead and try A, B, and C. I'm going to pause the video, and you're going to try it on your own, and then try to see if you can group them together, okay? Okay, so let's take a look at 3A. So with 3A, just visually, you see that there's an x squared, so I'm going to have one large x squared, 2x, so 2 rectangles, minus 3, so 3 small rectangles that are negative. Nothing here can be combined, so it will just look like this. 1 and 1 is 2. -1, -1, and -1. And if you look at the size and shape of this, you can't combine anything because you have a large square. There's no other large squares. You have 2 rectangles. You can combine that, but really it's just 2x. And then -1, -1, -1. You don't have any positives. You can't cancel anything out. So minus 3. Now for B, it's going to be a little bit different. So for B, what you have here is you have 4x plus 3 that's grouped together right here. So immediately I know that I'm going to have 4 rectangles. And I'm going to have a three ones, because it's plus 3. Okay, that's the first grouping. Now the second grouping that I'm going to have is the second piece right here. So I'm going to have 2 large x squares minus 2x. So I'm going to have 2 rectangles that has negative x in it, and then plus 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what you want to do is you want to see what can I combine together that look the same visually. Do you see that you have 2 of the rectangles and these 2 other negative rectangles? They go ahead and cancel. Do you see that, Grayson? Okay, so make sure you highlight them. And then, Grayson, do you also see that you have 1, 2, 3 positive squares? I'm sorry, positive squares. And you combine that with, and I should put plus, I should do that, plus, plus, plus. You want to combine that with these ones right here. They're all the same, right? So then you can't cancel anything there, but when you add them together, that's 3 plus the 4. Do you see that? So then essentially what you have left here is you have x squared, so that's going to be 2x squared, right? X, negative x cancel. So you're left here with 1, 2, so 2x, right? So plus 2x. And then lastly, you have 3 right there, plus 4, which is going to give you 7. And that's your answer right here. You see that? Okay. For C, what we have is we have the first grouping, which is 7x plus 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rectangles. I'm going to change it up and use horizontal rectangles instead. There's 7 of them. 8 little squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I didn't number them one, but you should just for practice. Plus 1. I should change the color of it because I can't see very well on this. Okay. Then what you have here is you see the negative right there. That negative switches everything in the second parenthesis to a different sign. So if I change this sign to a positive, do you see that? Everything in the second parenthesis has to become the opposite, okay? So what's opposite of a positive 2x? Negative 2x. What's opposite of a positive 3? Okay, so now that you have this change, right? What they call it in high school is they call it keep, flip, change, KFC, okay? First parenthesis you keep. The sign in the middle, you flip that sign to a positive. Do you see that? And you only do this with negatives, okay? Like if there's a minus in between. And in the second parenthesis, you change it. So the positive 2 becomes a negative 2x, positive 3 becomes a negative 3, okay? So now once I have that, I have 1, 2 rectangles, but they're negative rectangles. Do you see that? And then 1, 2, 3. And these are little squares. So I'm going to put -1, -1, -1. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and combine them and see if there's anything we can cancel. Do you see how these two, we can go ahead and just cancel that, right? And then we also see that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. With that, we can go ahead and cancel that as well because they're positive and negatives, right? So then you ask yourself, okay, what is left? Well, what's left is have the large rectangles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that gives me 5x. Do you see that? And then how many little squares do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 squares. So plus 5. That's your answer. And if you want to check your answer, you can also visually see this and go, okay, 7x minus 2x should be 5x, right? 8 minus 3 should be a positive 5. So you need to be very careful with your signs. Okay, remember, keep, flip, change. This is only for when you have a question such as parenthesis minus a parenthesis, like that, okay? If it was parenthesis plus a parenthesis, just remember there is no change in anything, okay? But if there's a minus between two parentheses, keep, flip, change, okay? All right, do we need to do number 4? No? Okay, so then the next piece that we have here, what else do we need to do here then? Oh, questions number 1 and 2. That's all we have to do with, okay. Okay, so then on the back side of this, you have problems 1 and 2. Problem 1, build x squared plus 2x plus 4. Keep it on your table. Build 2x squared plus 3x plus 6. Combine the two. Write the mathematical expression representing your action results. Sketch it here. So you're going to need some room, okay? Make sure you use color pencils, okay? So then for the first part right here, x squared is going to be 2 large x squares, right? Plus 2x, so 1, 2 rectangles, right? Plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're gonna label that as a plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, right? This is the first one. This is the first one right there, okay? Now you're gonna focus on the second one. So this is your second one, okay? Your second one, you're gonna have 1, 2, 2x squared, oops, not 2x, 1x squared, 1x squared, okay? Plus 3x means you're gonna have 1, 2, 3 rectangles, so plus x, plus x, plus x, right? Plus 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so we're gonna notate that as plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, okay? So then this right here represents the first parenthesis, okay? And I'm actually going to just block out this bottom piece right here. So that way we have a little bit more room, okay? So then this first piece right here, that represents x squared plus 2x plus 4. Second piece right here represents 2x squared plus 3x plus 6, right? So then if we combine everything together, so this is the first parenthesis, this is the second parenthesis, make sure that you have a plus sign in between here. If I combine them, how many large, and actually, I made a mistake here. Where did I make a mistake? On the first piece, right here. Where's my mistake here? You see how it's x squared, but I drew 2 rectangles, two large squares? Yeah, it should just be 1 large square, okay? So then how many large squares do you have here? 1 and then 2 here. So when you combine them, how many do you have? So 3x squared, right? And if you check, 1x squared plus 2x squared is 3x squared, okay? Next piece, how many rectangles do you have all together? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, plus 5x. If you check it, 2x plus 3x equals 5x. How many little squares do you have? And do any of them cancel? 10. None of them cancel. They're all positive, right? So put plus 10. 4 plus 6 is 10. This is your answer, okay? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the second part of this. Second piece, you're gonna do exactly the same for A, B, and C. I'm gonna pause the video so you can go ahead and. Okay, so then we're gonna go ahead and do question number 2. So 2A, so you have 2x, I'm gonna start off at the beginning. So we have 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3. So plus, plus, plus. This one is a plus sign in between the two. So then what that means is that for the second parenthesis, there is no change. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're minus or negatives. So then when you go ahead and combine this, you should be able to see that the 2x here, actually, hold on a second, just kidding. So then when you take a look at this, you should be able to see that how many x's do you have? You have 2x here, and then you have 4x here, so that's 6x. But then you also should see that the 3 here and the minus 3 cancels. Do you see that? Do you see that, Grayson? Okay, so then you're left with 1, 2, 3, negative 3, and that is your answer. Do you see it? Okay. So then we're going to do B. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So x, 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 x. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're all positive. This is also a plus, so that means there's no change to the second parenthesis. However, in the second parenthesis, you have a negative x. So negative x, 1, 2, 3, and they're minus, okay, or negative. So immediately when you look at this right here, notice that the 1x and the negative x cancels. Do you agree with that? That part cancels. And then what other cancels is that you have 3 negatives, and that cancels with a 3 positive. Do you see that? So then how many x's do you have left here? And then how many positives do you have left? And that's your answer, okay? Now, C is going to be a little bit more difficult, mainly because you have now the x squares, right? So that requires a little bit more work. So x squared means you have one big x squared. Then you have 1, 2, 3. So negative x, negative x, negative x, plus 2. Okay? This is a plus sign, so that means there is no change to this. And then if you take a look at the second parenthesis, you have a positive 3x squared. So you have x squared, x squared, x squared, minus 4x. So there's negative x, negative x, negative x, negative x, and then minus 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Minus, 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 minus. And remember, those are just negative numbers, like negative 1, right? So then what can we cancel? Oh, no, I can't. Just kidding. What can you cancel? Take a look at the negatives. You have a negative 3x right here. Do you see that? Actually, I don't have any negatives over there. Just kidding. I don't think you can, oh no, you can cancel the positive, the 2 plus 2 right here with the plus of the minus 2 right there. Okay? So then that cancels. So then how many x squares do you have altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many negative x's do you have altogether? Good. And then if you look at the little squares, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So minus 5. That's your answer. Does that make sense? Okay, so that concludes everything that we need to do for week 8, Tuesday. And that's it.